Good evening. I am Dorothy Burton, and I welcome you tonight to our Tuesday night live conversation where I do my best to analyze politics through the lens of leadership. Um, and it has been interesting to me to look at so many commentators from across the country talk about this Jasmine Crockett and James Tallarico race. We were sitting here last Tuesday this time when the results were kind of rolling in, and we didn't have the final results. What we had was a mess. And tonight, I want to set the record straight on a number of things that I've been hearing from people who do not live in Texas, who have some of them have never even been to Texas and have a wrong view of what happened last Tuesday. So I entitled this "What Really Happened in Dallas Last Week." Now I'm going to go back um, to January. I'm going to go back 3 months because the story that's out there, and I can understand why that story is there because it was a lot of chaos on election night. However, I went back, and not only I was not the only one. Dallas County did an outreach to let people know that things had changed, and so I had to go back and find this particular clip that I want to play for you. It's about it may be about 9 minutes or so, but it will explain in detail, as I talked about this when it first happened in January, what the Republicans were doing, the Republicans in Dallas County, why they were doing what they were doing, and what impact it would have on voters. So I'm going to play that clip for you. I welcome you if you're just coming in, just coming in. Welcome. We're going to really get into this race tonight in ways that only we can, not only we can, because I'm telling you, if you haven't seen Roland Martin's uh, a video on this, I encourage you to watch it because Roland and I said essentially the same thing because truth is the truth. So I'm going to start with this clip that I did from a video back in January where I not only explained what was going to happen in Dallas County because of what the Republicans had decided to do, but I also talked about what's going to happen in the fall as our voting records was turned over by our governor to the Department of Justice, and a number of states have turned over their voter rolls to the Department of Justice for the November election. If there's going to be a November election, we don't know what Trump is going to do. But the voter rolls have been turned over. And the reason why those voter rolls have been turned over is a continuation of what we just saw this spring, and that is voter suppression. It's real. It's not imagined, and it's very, very calculated. So I was giving people a chance to jump in. I'm going to show you this clip from January where we had a conversation very similar to tonight. And I want to show you a play for you. I want to play for you this clip. And it will help you, I hope, better understand. I hope that it would help people who are out of state understand because while it wasn't good what the Republicans did, some of us made it very clear and very plain what the deal was going to be. And we were right. So let's start with this clip. It didn't have to be, where you lived. It used to be years and years ago that you had to vote in the precinct on election day where you lived. But that has since changed over the years. During early voting, you can go wherever the polls are open. It doesn't have to be in your precinct. It doesn't have to be in your community. It doesn't have to be in your neighborhood. Well, the Republicans now have changed that. And so far, it's in Williamson County and Dallas County. And it's no accident that it's Williamson County and Dallas County that the Republicans have changed early voting on primary day, restricting it only to the polling place where you live in your community, your precinct. Uh, Williamson County is home to Round Rock, where Tallarico lives. And of course, Dallas County is home to Jasmine Crockett. The Republican Party in Williamson County and the Republican Party in Dallas County have restricted voting on primary day. And Michelle Evans, who is the chair of the Williamson County GOP, she said, "Oh, it just means that you're just going to have to vote in your community." And then she went on and they asked her, they said, "Well, why did y'all change it?" And she said, "Well, at the end of the day, we changed it because we could. That's why we changed it." And she said, "It's legal. It's something get this word, it's something we're entitled to do. And it's something our party wanted us to do." So they changed it. Now, in Dallas County, um, Alan West is y'all know Dallas County chair. Now, he did some crazy stuff. Dallas County Republicans were going to hand count ballots until they figured out, they didn't have enough people to hand count the ballots. So, okay. So they said, okay, we're going to restrict voting, polling, voting, polling locations too. Alan West said the reason why they did it is because it is a step closer to closed primaries. Now in Texas, we have open primaries where during the primary, you can vote in either the Republican or the Democrat primary. The Republicans have been pushing for years to have closed primaries, and Alan West said that this is the first step towards that. Now, the Republican Party, the state law says that both parties have to agree that on primary day that people can vote anywhere. The Republicans said, nah, we're going to change our mind. We're not going to do that. So since the Republicans said no, the Democrats in Williamson and Dallas County had no choice but to say no because the state law said that both parties have to agree. So be aware, y'all, in Texas, because I guarantee you that this is the beginning of what is going to be an avalanche. It started in Dallas County with Alan West, then Williamson County. It first started with the two counties where the two Democrat candidates are. But I guarantee you that the Republicans are going to do this throughout the state of Texas to limit the polling, to limit the opportunity for people to vote anywhere on election day as we have become accustomed to. Now, for Dallas County, it's going to be really, really bad because twofold, for two reasons. The Dallas County elections administrator, Paul Adams, and this is his quote. Paul said, "I realize that it's going to be very confusing as this has not happened in Dallas County in a number of years." He said, "The number of early voting, and this is for Dallas County, the number of early voting polling locations would be cut from 450 to a minimum of 250. Y'all hear me? Hello, somebody. The number of early voting locations in Dallas County is going to be cut from 450 to a minimum of 250. He said, the Dallas County elections administrator, Paul Adams, he said, "I'm going to do the best I can. Our staff is going to do the best that they can." He said, "But there's certainly a lot of hurdles to overcome, particularly for voter education." And I say that to say this, y'all, those of us who have become accustomed to voting that way. I'm getting this out early for two reasons. Number one, to implore you to please register to vote before 30 days out from March 30th. And then to be aware, because we are so accustomed to, okay, we'll go to the polling place, close to where we work. I want you to plan ahead, because if you're thinking that you're going to go to the polling place that you've always gone to vote during the primary, and it's like across the street from where you work, and you're thinking, okay, I can leave work, 15 minutes and just go across the street and vote. You won't be able to do that. So if you are if you are working downtown Dallas and you live in Rockwall, you're going to have to leave your job in downtown Dallas, understanding what that traffic is like, and get to Rockwall to your precinct on primary day in order to vote. If you don't, you will not be able to vote, and you will be turned away from the polling location if that is not your precinct. Y'all see, this is the kind of stuff they're doing, and I'm going to do the best that I can, and I know there are others that's going to do the best that they can. And this is what Paul said. Paul said it's going to be particularly a lot of hurdles to overcome in educating the voters. So I'm starting right now. Plan ahead. You cannot vote the way you voted in the past on election day. You will be turned away. Secondly, Dallas County people, you just heard Paul say that the voting locations are going to be cut from 450 to a minimum of 250. And we got word today on the news that the city of Dallas is considering closing a number of libraries. Libraries are polling places in a lot of places. So that's going to even complicate it even more. So I'm going to do what I can in informing you and keeping you up to date every Tuesday on where this thing is going. But just know, plan ahead. If you are not going to vote early, and if you are one of these people like my husband who insists on voting the day of the election, plan ahead. Plan ahead, because you're going to have to vote in your precinct, thanks to the Republicans. That is another way of what? Of diminishing the voting power of principally low income people and Democrats. I just hate to say it that way, but it's true. Because, why do I say that? Because it is the low income people most of the time who depend on public transit. And if they can't get a bus or a shuttle out in time to get to their precinct where they live, and they've been used to, well, I'll catch the second bus or I'll catch the third bus, because they know that they could just go across the street and vote. They won't be able to do that anymore. So if people don't have transportation and they're dependent on public transportation on election day, it's going to be very, very difficult. And I'm going to throw in there too, you see the cities, if you are in Dallas County, there are cities that are going to be holding these, get these to exit from DART, although that won't impact this time. But it's going to get increasingly more difficult. So I just want you to make a note that if you are not one of these people who vote early and you vote on election day, plan ahead, because you won't be able to do what you've done in the past. So what they are gearing up for is the closed primary, and that's what Alan West said. So right now, it's just in Dallas and Williamson County, the counties for the two Democrat candidates, Talarico and Crockett, their home counties. But you can just about guarantee that the Republicans are going to do this statewide. So get ready, because that's coming. Okay, let me see some comments. Fort Worth is a nationalist mecca. It is. Oh. Yes, it is. Dallas County, y'all. Hey, Michael Goodman. How was the Dallas County Republican Committee able to restrict without the? They agreed. They agreed. They didn't want to agree. Let me see if I have the quote from the I don't have the code from Cardell, but uh, he was adamantly opposed to it, but it was nothing he could do about it because that's what state law says, that the parties have to agree. And since the Republican Party is, the party of the president and all that kind of stuff, uh, they said no. So Dallas County didn't have a choice. The Dallas County Democrats didn't have a choice. Williamson County Democrats didn't have a choice. And Democrats across the state of Texas, if the Republican Party in 254 counties decide to do this, the Democrats in those 254 counties are going to have to do it too, restricting voting on election day. I know it. I know. I know it. But that's why, we come on Tuesday night and excuse me, we get down to business and we talk about the things that is impacting people because y'all, so much stuff is happening. Okay. So there you have it. That was the explanation for it. And you could see I said over and over and over, implored people to vote early. Dallas County spent, and why am I going through this? Because of the misinformation that's out there nationally. Dallas County even spent, the county commissioners court approves $1 million for voter education so that the county could get out the vote, so that the county could get out the information that this had changed. And this was very significant for people, even though I started talking about it way back in January, because the Republican parties of Williamson and Dallas County actually decided to do this in December. There were, I think, a couple of news articles that came out, but nobody was paying attention. Why? Because it was around Christmas time. See, people who are in politics, y'all, I've been in it a long time, and timing is everything. Everything that a politician does is for a reason. And they did this around Christmas time and the first of the year. Now, nobody was paying attention to this at Christmas time. Nobody was paying attention to this at New Year's. So the articles came and went, and it was like it was no big deal. But when I saw that, I knew that that was a sea change. And it would be very difficult 3 months out for people to vote. So me and others, what the failure was, and I put this on Facebook, the Dallas County Democratic Party should have done a better job. Dallas County Commissioners Court, as I said, allotted $1 million to the elections department, because you heard what I read, the quote from the elections administrator. He said, this is going to be a significant hurdle for us to overcome. Not only that, but the voting places was cut over half from 450, from 450 polling places to 250. Can you imagine that? It was a train wreck waiting to happen. The Dallas County Democratic Party should have done a better job. And I say this in love, and I said it at the time. The Dallas County elected officials who were not on the ballot, who have campaign funds, they could have done a better job in educating their constituents. They didn't. So voters were left on their own. If they didn't get that little bitty card from the Dallas County Elections Department, and they only sent out, to my knowledge, one mailing, and that was it. And I wish I had kept my little card. On the little card, the urgency of the moment was not evident, because the message on the front of the card was, your voting place could have changed. You think? The voters were failed. The leaders failed them. The Democratic Party of Dallas County failed them. I'll say that in front of God and everybody. And the elected officials who were not on the ballot could have done a better job in informing their constituents. They didn't. So for people, and people put everything on social media. There could have been, social media is free. There could have been, and all of these elected officials, Dallas County Democrat Party, all of them have social media accounts. They have Instagram, they have Facebook, they have YouTube, they have all these things. So I'm not trying to lay blame on anybody. There's enough error to go around. The only ones that were on point in this was the Republicans, because they knew exactly what they were doing. Exactly what they were doing. And if y'all think it was chaos in the primary, you've seen nothing when it comes to November, because this was a trial run. Don't think that the Republican Party of Dallas County and the Texas Republican Party and the NRC, the National Republican Committee, didn't have a Zoom call, conference call, or meeting, because this was a test case. This was a test balloon. It's going to get worse. Not only is it going to get worse in the constriction of the voting places during early voting, but the Justice Department has the voter files, the voter rolls of states. A lot of people weren't paying attention at the time, but I said it at the time way back in January. Our governor handed over Texans' voting rolls in December. See, they did all this stuff, y'all, around the holidays because nobody was paying any attention. Governor Abbott handed over all voters in Texas. And when I say they handed over the voter rolls, I'm just not talking about our addresses. They have our social security numbers. They have our date of birth. They have our red check. They have all of that. And that's in preparation for this SAVE Act. If the SAVE Act passes, it is over. So with the voter rolls, with the SAVE Act, and the president has the ability, if the country is at war, to declare an emergency and declare all bets off when it comes to elections. This is no joke. This is an assault not only on our democracy, but this is an assault on every last American. And that's what we're up against. And people need to take this thing seriously, because that's just how serious it is. Now, with these voter rolls, I'm going to put the link in the comments for this, because I want you to go back and look at that video, not because it's me. I don't do this on Tuesday night for me. I don't do this on Tuesday night for fame and all that. God gave me this platform to tell the people the truth, so that people would not be in the dark, so his people would know the truth, so his people would know what to do, y'all. So I did a whole segment on the voter registration rolls, and they want the rolls so that they can purge the people. If the SAVE Act doesn't pass, they still have the voting rolls, and they still, from the voting rolls, can purge those rolls, and that's what they're doing. And I compared it to, since I'm in Texas, y'all ain't never had to clean chitlins, but those of us who had to clean chitlins, this is what's happening to our voter rolls. The state hands over the voter rolls to the Justice Department. The Justice Department goes through the voter rolls, every last one of them, and purges them. When the Justice Department goes through the voter rolls and cleans them, they send them back to the state. See, this is what is going on right now in preparation for November, because those voter rolls have to be back in the hands of the states by August for the November election. But by law, they also have to go through these steps. So the state hands over the voter rolls to the Department of Justice. The Department of Justice purges the rolls, what they clean the rolls. Then they send them back to the state to clean some more. Now, those of us who are in Texas, we're very well aware of this, because remember when last year our governor purged over 1 million people from the voting rolls. And then the last step is it goes back to the Justice Department for one last cleansing, and then these voter rolls have to be back to the states by August, because there is I think a 30-day or a 60-day period where these voter rolls have to be back to the state before the November election. So with what we have just gone through with the primary, just know that behind the scenes, the Department of Justice is cleansing our voter rolls. They're purging our voter rolls in conjunction with the states that have cooperated with the Department of Justice. Now, the states that did not voluntarily cooperate with the Department of Justice has sued those states. That was one of the reasons why they went into Minnesota. They said, okay, if you want ICE to leave, then give us your voting rolls. Y'all remember that? This is all a part of it. So just like in January, I'm just here to sound the alarm, to say, y'all, this is what's going on, and this is what our government is doing. And this is what our government is doing in Texas, because Texas, and I don't have the slide, but I'm going to put the link so you can watch the video, and I'll probably post the slides on Facebook and here on YouTube. Because what's happening is there are a number of states that voluntarily handed over their rolls, Texas being one of them. And the states that voluntarily handed over their rolls, guess what? You would guess that they're the red states. Excuse me, principally states in the South. There are states that are resisting, and those states that are resisting, those states are being sued by the Justice Department. Either they're being sued, or the government is holding up funding that these states need for infrastructure or for grants. This is the kind of evilness that we're dealing with, and it all has to do with total control of our government. And it begins with our votes, and it begins at the local level. And that's why Alan West, and Alan West isn't even from here, he's from Florida. Alan West, when he came, he was going to be somebody. He ran for governor. He thought he could be Greg Abbott, and they told him to sit down. And then he was the chairman of the State Department, the state Republican Party, and left it in shambles. And now he's chairman of the Dallas County Republican Party, and he's the blackest MAGA you would ever know. I know Alan West. I know him. He is what he is. And they're playing for keeps. So we have to play for keeps. We have to take this thing seriously. Those of us who know, it is incumbent upon us to do everything we can, to use every avenue that we can to inform y'all, to inform the people, because this is no joke. This is no joke. And the National Democrat Party committee has come out with when the DOJ did this back in December. They came out and said, hey, wait a minute, that's the holy grail of every American citizen. When you're talking about your date of birth, your social security number, your driver's license number, that's what they have, y'all. And that's what our governor gave them. And I told you the process. So our rolls are in process of being cleansed, of being purged. So that's where we are. Now, let's get back to this with Dallas County and this race. Because a lot of what we're hearing on the national front from people who've never been to Texas, never been here, don't know anything, it's always easy to say it's race. It's so much more than race. And some of it you can't just say it's somebody else's fault. Because let me start here. Those of you who are not from Texas, those of you who are from Texas, y'all know well these dates. And I want you to look at these dates. February 2nd was the last day to register to vote for the primary. Early voting started on February 17th. People had February 17th, 18th, 19th, 20th, February 21, February 22, February 23rd, February 24th, February 25th, February 26th, February 27th to vote. People in Dallas County could vote anywhere, any precinct. They could vote anywhere from February 17th to February 27th. The Republicans couldn't do a thing about that. If they could have restricted that then, they would have. The best that they could do was election day. So people in Dallas County, people in Texas had 10 days to vote. It was election day for 10 straight days. It was election day from February 17th through February 27th. It was election day for 10 days. And people did not take advantage of it, even though, as I said, some of us had sounded the alarm saying, please, please, please vote early. The sororities, the Divine Nine, the fraternities, we got the word to people the best we could. Dallas County did with the $1 million spent with the elections department. Could some have done better? They could have. But we as voters and we as citizens and we as responsible citizens have to take it upon ourselves to become educated and to take advantage of what we do have before what we do have is taken away from us. And that is what they want to do. Let's look at this. And I'm going to get into this particular race because, again, on the national front, they're blaming everything on race. Now, I am not so naive enough to not say that race did not play a part. It did. See, I say this all the time. Not only am I an old East Texas country girl, let me tell you how I know Texas, and I know Texas is racist. Came up in East Texas. We had to have our food handed to us out the back door to go eat. And I'm not that old. I'm old, but I ain't that old. We had a town in East Texas in Greenville. The blackest dirt, the whitest people. We had sundown towns in Texas. So I'm very much aware of the racism in Texas. I had to go. I was an athlete in high school. I had to go to the back door of my doctor's office when I sprained my ankle, but my teammates could go in the front door. So I understand it. I understand it. And it's because I understand it, because I have run for elected office, because I was the first African-American elected to the city council in my city, because I have gone and knocked on doors, and because I've been called nigger, because I've been called some of everything, told that I needed to change my hair because it scared people. I get it. I get it. That's why I'm so passionate about what I do here on Tuesday night. It's just not politics. Y'all, we are in for the fight of our life. I get it. So I'm not going to sit here and say racism did not play a part. It did, but we also played our part in not doing and not taking advantage of the opportunities that were afforded to us. It's just like in the Bible. And I know some of y'all here and y'all don't want to hear all that in the Bible and all that. But the Bible's not a religious book. There's a story in the Bible about 10 virgins. They were going to this reception and they had their oil lamps. 9 of them brought extra oil in case they would have to stand in line longer. One didn't. She didn't bring extra oil. She didn't plan ahead. So she had to go back into town to get extra oil. And by the time she came back, the door to the banquet was closed. She got locked out. Why? Because she didn't plan ahead and she didn't prepare. And it's the same thing with these voters in this primary season. They got locked out. Why? Because they didn't plan ahead. They had 10 days to vote. 10. So I'm not, I'm not blaming anybody. All I'm saying is, y'all, we have to take advantage of what is given to us. And we can't blame others when we don't take advantage of what is given to us. So let's look at this. Where where am I going to start? Where am I going to start? Let me start with this race. Let me dispel this right now. A lot of people are saying, these people that's out of state, they don't know nothing about Texas, ain't never been to Texas, or they have a cousin here or something. Yeah, we went through a horrible gerrymander. District 30 is still District 30. I live in District 30. District 30 is still District 30. District 30, as a matter of fact, is blacker than it was before gerrymandering, because it was one of those districts that did not get it got packed. It didn't get it wasn't cracked, it was packed. Now there's cracking and there's packing when it comes to gerrymandering. And you'll hear those terms. Cracking is when they split districts and splinter them off. Packing is when they pack a district with one particular ethnic group. District 30 was not cracked, it was packed, meaning that it is blacker now than it was before. Jasmine Crockett did not lose District 30. What they did with Jasmine Crockett, and what they do in redistricting when they want to, for lack of a better word, when they want to get rid of a representative, I've seen them do it. I've been in the room when they've done it. They will draw that representative out of the district. They will literally, when they gerrymander, when they draw the lines, when they redraw the lines, they will literally draw the home of the representative that they want to get rid of out of the district. So that means that they don't represent that district anymore. They went away, the district didn't. So if Congresswoman Crockett wanted to still run for District 30, all she would have had to do was rent an apartment, rent a home temporarily. If she wanted to, she could have gotten another residence in District 30. District 30 didn't go anywhere. District 30 changed, but it changed for the better when it comes to us. And that's why Freddie Haynes, that's why all of the, I think it was 3 of them that ran for this district, they were black. Because ain't no way in the world anybody else running for District 30, if they don't look like me, if they ain't black, ain't no way in the world they were going to win. So let's dispel that right now. District 30 was not gerrymandered away. District 30 was made more to look like us, okay? But they did draw her out. And she had a choice to either find another residence in the district. She could have done that. Or run for another seat. She chose to run for another seat. Now, people say, okay, why did she wait so late to run? Well, she waited so late to run because remember that this went all the way up to the Supreme Court. So when the Supreme Court made their decision, it was the last day to file. So Congresswoman Crockett had to make a decision. Was she going to get another residence, rent a residence, buy a residence in District 30, or was she going to run for another seat? Congresswoman Crockett made the decision to run for the Senate seat. By the time she made the decision to run for the Senate seat, although it was because of the delayed decision by the Supreme Court, by the time she decided to get in the race on the last day, James Tallarico had a 3, 4, 5, 6 months head start. He had a head start. And when Congresswoman Crockett entered the race, and throughout the race, there are 10 things. And like I said, I'm here to educate. Congresswoman Crockett is my congresswoman. But not anymore. I thank God for Pastor I won't say Pastor Hawkins. I thank God for Pastor Haynes. He's going to be, if they think they had problems with Congresswoman Crockett, oh my God, they wait till Freddie Haynes get on the scene in Congress. So we still are very well represented. So by the time she got into the race, y'all, James Tallarico had such a lead. And as I said, she had 3 months to mount a statewide race. Texas is 254 counties. 254. You can't imagine the magnitude of Texas and the diversity of Texas. You have to work Texas. And if you're going to run a statewide race, I ran 5 city council races. I lost 1 and won 4. You don't even wait 3 months to run a mayoral race or a city council race in a city, let alone a state. And if you do, and if you are filing to run against a already popular candidate with a well-oiled machine, you better hit the ground running. You better hit the ground hitting on every cylinder. Congresswoman Crockett did not do that. There are about 10 things. As I sat here, I was sketching them, I was writing them. There are 10 things that you gotta have if you're going to get into a race of this magnitude. Number 1, you have to have time. Time was not on her side. Not only did she get in the race late, she is in a very difficult spot in Congress with all the craziness that's going on there. So she had to have time to sit in those congressional hearings, and she also had to have time to traverse 254 counties. Time was not on her side. You have to have a plan. She didn't have a plan. As a matter of fact, one of her former colleagues, and people were shocked, she's a state representative, Jolanda Jones, down in Houston. This is what her former colleague, Jolanda Jones, said. She said people who don't understand politics would be upset because Jasmine was their hero, said Texas State Representative Jolanda Jones, a Democrat. But for people who understand politics, Crockett literally had no ground game. She added, "This L is on her." Now, that may sound harsh to some people, but like the representative said, unless you understand politics, you're not going to understand what that means. It was not race. And let me see, you need time, you need a plan, and you need money. Oh, do you need money to run a statewide race in Texas? James Tallarico, when it was all said and done, James Tallarico raised about $15.3 million. 15.3 that he spent. That he spent on ads. 15.3 million. Congresswoman Crockett, 4.3. He had working in his favor, although it was not part of his campaign. And y'all heard me here before talk about that super PAC because I got on him about that super PAC. Eventually, I think that ad came down, or that ad was just showing on because I said, look, James Tallarico, if you're the man of God that you say you are, you wouldn't let that ad stand, even though it's the PAC that's running it. But that super PAC spent $7.7 million. $7.7 million. Congresswoman Crockett had a PAC that couldn't even spend $1 million. Only $500,000. So she didn't have the time, she didn't have a plan, she didn't have the money. And the next thing you need to run this kind of race is an organization. I'm talking about any kind of race, and anybody who's sitting here can tell you this. If you're a county elected official, or like me, a former city council, these are just things that you have to win. And at the state level, you have to have these things on steroids to win. So she didn't have the time, she didn't have a plan, she didn't have the money, she didn't have the organization. There was not even a campaign manager. Congresswoman Crockett, to her credit, is a star, is a superstar. And I say that in love. She is. I say she's my congresswoman. She has that on the national level. But that does not translate to organization when you have to run a statewide race in Texas. And it did not happen for her. So not only did she not have the time, she didn't have a plan, she didn't have the money, she didn't have the organization, and the next thing she didn't have a message. Tallarico was very disciplined in his messaging. And Tallarico stayed on message no matter what, they asked him. That boy, Opie Taylor, now y'all know I call him Opie Taylor. Opie Taylor was going to say the same thing. We got to love our neighbor. We got to love our neighbor. And then he goes into very softly and very calmly his message. And that message did not change. Go back and look at some of the reels. No matter what they ask Opie Taylor, no matter what they ask Opie stayed on message. He didn't talk about race. He didn't talk about racism. He didn't talk about women. He didn't talk about none of that. Now his people did. His supporters did. I don't mean social media and all that. But he never did. Now, Congresswoman Crockett, she did not have that disciplined message. And a lot of people saw the message that she had was not a message of hope, but a message of grievance. And that didn't play well at all. So now with the time, plan, the money, the organization, the message, and the next thing you have to have is discipline. Discipline. And not only was this an unorganized campaign, it was not a disciplined campaign. Because why? Because it didn't have a plan. And then you have to be able, and if you've watched me before, months and months, I've been talking about this for a year. Now, when major newspapers make recommendations, when they endorse a candidate, and I'm talking about statewide because I don't deal with local, but when they do, and I went through all of this, you can go back and look at the video too, the major papers that endorse candidates. When they look at who they're going to endorse, they look at principally two things. They look at electability, and when I say electability, see, a lot of people say turn that into race. But it has less to do with race and more to do with how likely is it that this person can build coalitions across the state. That's what's meant by electability. It has nothing, I'm going to say this again, everything has something to do with race in America, but especially in Texas, I told y'all. But when they talk about that, it is two things. It is how likely, which one of these candidates is more likely to build a coalition across the state? And then which one of these candidates are more likely to, because they are able to build if they are able to build, and they look at all these things I'm telling y'all, this is what they look at too. Because what does that do? That signals to the money class, the donors, that this person is likely to be more electable because this person is likely to be able to build a broader coalition than that person. And that's what they look at. Now, what the word is in Texas is not electability like all of these people, these West Coast, East Coast people talk about. In Texas, it's not electability, it's relatability. And y'all have heard me say that over and over and over and over again. Texas is not like any other state. Relatability is very important to Texas voters, especially Texas rural voters, and especially Texans. Now, let me say this. If you're in Texas, you know what I'm talking about. You'll hear Texans say all the time, because I say it. I'm a fifth generation Texan. And I'm so proud of that. And you'll hear people say, oh, I'm a fifth generation Texan. Or I'm a fourth generation Texan. Or I'm a sixth generation Texan. That means something in Texas. That's relatability. And also relatability is how well can you relate to people when in their environment. Not for what you bring, because Congresswoman Crockett is a star. She has the star power. And I said it last year when she first filed. That's going to play well in the urban areas because people do watch The View. People do watch MSNBC. People do watch the NAACP Image Awards. But when you get down there, when you get in Central Texas, when you get on the border, and some of those deep East Texas, now she carried East Texas, but some of those deep East Texas towns, some of those former sundown towns, that ain't gonna mean nothing to those people. Why? Because they can't relate to it. They can't relate to you, and you can't relate to them. And you're going to have to be able to speak their language, because it comes down to three principal things. And I'm talking about relatability. I'm not talking about electability, what the state, what these people, these all commentators and all these people talking about. That ain't it in Texas. It's relatability. And if you are a fifth generation, fourth generation, you're a native Texan, you right there. Now, Congresswoman Crockett isn't a native Texan. I think Congresswoman Crockett is from Missouri. What's his name? Ran to the same thing. Alan West. He come here with his cowboy hat and his cowboy boots and all that. Boy, you from Florida. You better sit down. You're not, no, you ain't from here. You ain't from here. They sat him down. He ain't from here. And even when Congresswoman Crockett was Congresswoman, she only served 2 terms. So her roots weren't very deep in Texas. So if your roots aren't very deep in Texas, if your roots aren't deep, your relatability won't be that deep. Meaning you won't be able to relate to the people you need to relate to in the way that they need you to relate to them. Because I said it before, along with relatability comes high tech and high touch. High tech and high touch. High tech is social media. Democrats, liberals, urban, progressives are very, very good at that. But then it's the high touch. Now, Tallarico and his team were very good at the high tech. I ain't seen we've seen nothing like it in Texas. He was everywhere. He was on every social media platform. But he also had high touch. And the high touch relates to the relatability. Why? Because those people in the country, those people in Central Texas, those people down there on the border, they're not on their cell phone scrolling and all that. They're not high tech, but they're high touch. And with high touch comes relatability. Get it? Get it? He had that. She didn't have that. And that worked against her big time. It wasn't the electability factor, it's the relatability factor. Because people want to know, we have 254 counties, right? But in Texas, politics really is local. All politics is really, 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 really local. And as I've explained this before, that's why you will have some rural Democrats voting for the Republican candidate during the election. Not that they're Republican, they're Democrats. But rural counties, rural people, it's all about the local, who represents me. So if that Republican they think is going to represent them better than the Democrat, they're going to vote for that Republican. Remember, Alan West said, and that's one of the things they want to cut out, being able these open primaries. Because local relatability, that is what works in Texas. Because people want to know. They don't care about all that star power. They don't care about all the big, they don't care about none of that. They care about 3 things. What you gonna do for me, what you gonna do for my family, and what you gonna do for my community. That's it. And if you can relate to them, and if they can relate to you on those principal 3 issues, what you're going to do for me, what you're going to do for my family, what you're going to do for my community, if you can relate that to them, you got their vote. But you have to be able to do that. And Congresswoman Crockett didn't have that connection. It was not about her electability. She's electable. It's not about that. It's not electability, it's relatability in Texas. West Coast and East Coast people, remember that. And then it's boots on the ground. Okay. She didn't have the time. She didn't have a plan. She didn't have the organization. She didn't have the message. And she didn't have the discipline. And she didn't have the organization. And the next thing, Texas is a huge state. You got to have boots on the ground. You got to have boots on the ground. She didn't. She didn't have a campaign manager. Tallarico had 38,000. Now, this is according to him. I mean, he could be lying. He could be inflated numbers. I don't know. But according to his campaign, he had 38,000 volunteers. 38,000 boots on the ground. Excuse me. He had that. Congresswoman Crockett didn't have that. Why? Because she didn't have a disciplined campaign. She didn't have an organized campaign. She didn't have a campaign with money. She didn't have a campaign that had a plan. And she didn't have a campaign that had time. Huh. I'm just saying what God loved, and that's true. I know two things. I know how to cook greens and I know politics. Kind of know the Bible a little bit. And then the other thing, we're going down this list of things that you got to have. And the next thing is visibility in all markets. Visibility in all markets. Now, let me break this down when I say visibility in all markets as it relates to the primary, as opposed to the general. You see, primary is primary because your primary voter is your primary voter. Now, you can't get mad at Tallarico if he has identified his primary voter in the, because see, that's the thing about primaries that you got to understand. Primaries are about getting out your people, your primary people. Put it like that. Primaries are about getting out your primary people. And it's not that you ignore other people. You don't ignore them, but you focus on your primary voter for the primary, because primaries is about winning. And in order to win, you have to know who your primary voter is. It's just like they will tell you, like I'm on YouTube, right? So, and I do a lot of, and if you do coaching and if you do training, your coach will tell you to put in your mind an avatar. An avatar. Who, give the avatar a name. Who is this person you're trying to sell to? Or who is this person you are trying to convey your idea to? That's an avatar. And then they'll tell you to give the avatar a name. So if your avatar is Black, female, 45, lives in urban areas, that's who you're going to go. You're not going to go after anybody else. Why? Because that's not who your people are. And in primary is your people. So you can't get mad at Tallarico if he has identified in the primary his primary voter or his avatar. And that's how you have to think about it. So when he did the visibility in all markets, and let me break this down. Let me say this in a way that is not non-racial or binary or anything like that. In a primary race, what matters is your primary voter, your avatar. And you have identified your avatar or your primary voter. How? You've identified them through polling, you've identified them through your organization, you've identified them through all of these things that you run through these different things to identify your primary voter for the primary. Once you identify who your primary voter is, your avatar, you don't worry about them other people. You don't worry about them other people. It's not that they don't matter to you. They just don't matter to your win, if that makes sense. So when people say that Tallarico ignored Black voters, those were not his avatar. Those were not his primary voters. So I don't care if it's Tallarico. I don't care who it is. Jasmine Crockett, the same. She told us at the beginning who her avatar was, who her primary voter was, who she was going after, and she went after her avatar. She went after her primary voter. That's what you do in primaries. That's what primaries are for, to go after your primary voter, because if you go after enough of your primary voters, well, you're going to win the primary. That's the game. But in order to win the game, you have to have this list of things. And so now we're down to visibility in all markets, and that's the avatar. Now, when I say visibility in all markets, you have to identify who your avatar is in that market. James Tallarico was not going to come into Dallas County being principally black looking for votes. Why? Because those aren't his avatar. Those aren't his primary voters. Jasmine Crockett was not going to go to Rio Grande Valley looking to get a majority of the votes. Why? Because those people aren't her avatar. Those aren't her primary voters. So you spend your time, you spend your money, you spend your organization, you organize your plan around your avatar, around your primary voter for the primaries. And that's what James Tallarico did. He did it very well. Why? Because he had time, he had a plan, he had money, he had an organization, he had message, he had discipline, he had relatability, and he had boots on the ground. So that allowed him to be visible in the markets that he needed to be visible to for his primary voter, for his avatar. And then the last thing, you have to be flexible. And in order to be flexible, you can't be flexible if you ain't got no money. You can't be flexible if you ain't got time. You can't be flexible if you don't have a plan. You cannot be flexible if you don't have organization. You can't be flexible if you don't have a message, and you can't be flexible if you don't have discipline, and you can't be flexible if you're not relatable. And you sure can't be flexible if you don't have boots on the ground and if you're not visible to the people that you need to be visible to. And I just gave y'all how you run a primary race and what you need. Did I say race anywhere in that? No, I didn't. No, I didn't. No, I didn't. Is it a factor? Yes, it is. When you are factoring in your avatar or your primary voter. Because why? Because that lets you know who you need to go after. Why? To win. Primaries are about identifying your primary voter so you can win. But you need those 10 factors to line up for you in order for you to win. That's why Tallarico won. Now, after the primary, and this is for every primary, I don't care who wins. After the primary, there's always going to have to be outreach for the other person's avatars if you're going to win in November. See, it's strategy. It's strategy, and it's mathematics, and it's planning. And for those who don't understand, it's like the Congress, it's like Representative Jones said, for those who don't understand politics, they're going to be upset because Jackson was their hero. But for those who understand politics, I just told y'all what the deal is. Now y'all understand. Now y'all understand what the deal is. That's what you got to have. You got to, and every campaign starts out with this checklist months before they announce. They do. That's how you win. It has nothing to do with star power. It has nothing to do with all that. You got to have a plan. You got to have a plan. And the plan has to begin with identifying your primary voter. And once you identify it's just like those people who are in marketing. It's just like they have to identify who they're marketing to. And once they identify who they're marketing to, they study that person. What do they like? What they don't like? You know why they're doing that? It goes back to what I said, relatability. Relatability. People spend tons and tons of money on market research. Politicians do the same thing. They don't call it market research, though. They call it organization. And you got to have it. And you got to have it. All those 10 things. If you want my list, if you think my running bombers, I'll be happy to share it with you, because you got to have every last one of those 10 things like a spark plug. Every last one of them have to be firing at the right time. And it's sequential. And they have to fire at the right time. For Congresswoman Crockett, none of them did. Not one of the 10 did. Not one. And that's why she didn't win. It had little to do. Now, I'm not saying it didn't have anything to do. Let me show you these numbers. Let me show you these numbers right here. Now, I looked for the source. I got this. I don't know where I got this. I got these numbers. Now, they closely mirror I'm not, I cannot, I'm saying I cannot say that these numbers are accurate because I couldn't find the source. They were sent to me. But if these numbers are pretty close, now the 52.3 and the 46%, they are spot on. So I have no reason to believe these other numbers aren't. They could or could not be. And you know, y'all always want to put the source up there. But that's how it broke down. And if you look at the black vote, if you look at how those votes turned out, you will understand which you will understand how they went about their race and who they went after. James Tallarico was not going to spend time trying to go after the black vote. Now, it's not been told, but Congresswoman Crockett, she got what, 36% of the Latino vote, almost 30% of the white vote. So it's not like whites and Hispanics did not vote for her. It was just that enough of them did not vote for her. Why? Because they were Tallarico's people. Her people, as she said from the beginning, she was going to go after voters who had not voted. She was going to go after black voters, and that's what she went after. Her avatar, her avatar, and she did pretty well on that. And let me share this with you. Let me share this with you to give you an idea. To give you an idea. Now this I know is accurate. This is Texas, my friend, my friend, my friend. If you look at the purple areas and the kind of violet areas, those are the areas that went for Congresswoman Crockett. And you can see those areas are principally Dallas and east of Dallas, which is East Texas. And we talked about that last week. I broke it down to you where the voters are going to come from for these candidates, and I was not wrong. I wasn't wrong because I got it from Vote Hub. Okay, hey, that's smart. But we knew that Congresswoman Crockett's vote was principally going to come from Dallas and east of Dallas in East Texas. Why? Because most of East Texas is black. And that is her avatar. So we knew that that's where her vote was going to come from, and it did. Now, when you look at Central Texas, those of you who are looking like Fort Worth, and then the Hill Country is kind of center Texas as you go further west to El Paso, Congresswoman Crockett had some support out there. But if you look at how this map is shaped up, Tallarico was in East. He had a few little places in East Texas. But with the exception of East Texas, Tallarico got Central Texas. He got West Texas. He got the border. And he went down to South Texas along the coast. That's how he won. That is how he won. And that is what the map looks like of his the how the vote shook out. Now, let me take this out because I like to look at y'all when I'm talking to you. I hope this is making sense for y'all. I hope this is making sense. Now, another thing. Congresswoman Crockett knew she was going to go after voters that were registered but had not voted. And she did get those voters out because there was record turnout. Her strongest stronghold was Dallas County. And in order for her to win Dallas County, she would have had to be a plus 40. She only got to plus 19 in Dallas County. So when she didn't get to plus 40, and that was her biggest stronghold, it was over then because she could only get to plus 19. She needed to get to plus 40. And even in Harris County, even though there are record turnouts, and that's why I'm not putting all these numbers up here and all, because y'all have heard all that. All I'm trying to do is explain to you, give to you the backstory. Even in Harris County, she only got, I think, plus 4 in Harris County, which is the largest county, which has the largest African-American population. So that's why. And she was outspent like 5-1. 5-1. So from the beginning of when these Dallas County Republicans changed the game around Christmas time, and that's really when they changed the game at Christmas time, up until Election Day. And Election Day turned out exactly how Allen West and the Republican Party of Dallas wanted it to turn out. However, somebody say however, if people had taken the warnings, it's over and over again, plan ahead. Y'all heard me in just that little bitty segment how many times I said plan ahead, plan ahead, plan ahead. There were 10 election days. Actually, 11 election days, if you count the actual election day that people had to vote. But people didn't take it seriously because, like we've never been this place before. It was like Joshua told them when they were about to cross the Jordan, he said, y'all get ready. He said, because we have never been this way before. And that's how it came out in Dallas County. Now, I'm going to say this last thing. It ain't, I don't know any other way to say it. But the last thing you need on that list of 10, y'all, if I'm going to add an 11th thing, is you have to have the backing of your colleagues. I'm going to say it again. You have to have the backing of your colleagues. Now, there were state reps who came out who had served with Tallarico and endorsed him. Nobody is talking about the facts that not one that I could find on her website or any of the materials, I couldn't find one endorsement from a colleague. I couldn't, not AOC, not Bernie, I couldn't find any endorsements from colleagues that she served with in the state legislature for 2 terms. That mattered too. Now, when the race was over, as I have said this before, Tallarico was not a flash in the pan. Tallarico worked with a lot of school teachers, a lot of schools. He worked on those school vouchers. He was a warrior against those Christian nationalists. I've said this before, when they tried to shove their religion down the throats of our children, when they were banning books at school boards, when they were packing school boards, when they were doing all these nefarious things. James Tallarico built a lot of relationships, not only with school boards, but he built a lot of relationships with coalitions of teachers, of parents, PTAs, Bible study groups. And it goes back to that thing that I talked about on that list of 10, relatability. Not so for Congresswoman Crockett. And it is not true that James Tallarico does not have Black support. He does. But Black voters were not his avatar, his primary voters in this primary. And he does have a lot of work to do to build those bridges. But as I have explained to you, the primary process and how it works, you go for your primary voter. Not, to say that the other people don't matter. You just know that they're not going to vote for you. Tallarico could have come to Dallas County. He could have come to South Dallas. He could have spent time with Black people. They were not going to vote for him. Congresswoman Crockett could have gone and spent time with Latino voters. She could have gone and spent time with Bobby Polito. She could have gone and spent time with them. They weren't going to vote for her. Those weren't her primary voters. Black voters were not his primary voters. And by him representing the district that he represented in Austin, in Round Rock, it ain't a lot of people it's not a lot of Black people in Round Rock. It's not a lot of Black people in Austin. And he came into I think he was elected when he was 29 years old. So he's been in office a while. So he built those relationships. And that's how it works, y'all. That's how it works. And this right here is the most telling thing. And I saw this, and I know she don't mind me sharing it because she's a former school teacher. He's a former school teacher. And she's now a state representative. Aisha Davis. She's also my soror. This was the sweetest photo. And she had the sweetest note. She said, 2 former teachers turned legislators just trying to improve schools and communities by fighting for better laws for public education, protections for individuals, and more resources for families. And Representative Davis said, congratulations to my friend and colleague, Representative James Tallarico. November will be here before we know it. So let's get organized now. So y'all don't believe the hype of these national people, of these commentators. That's the story. And as I said, I was going to talk about tonight the other side of the story. That's the other side of the story. I know it don't make for clicks. I know it don't make for popularity. I know I'll lose subscribers. I'll get mean comments. I'll get all that. But that's just the truth. And I'm here for no other reason than to tell you the truth, just like I did back in January to warn the people. That's why I'm here. So yeah. And for the race baiters and haters and wanting to make this race something that it wasn't, they're going to do that. And it's going to be to our detriment if we, as people who want to see a better Texas, shame on us if we stay home in November, because it's just going to get worse for us if either Paxton or Corning wins. And that's the prize. The prize is the seat. And we will see, and I will guarantee you, probably, I can't guarantee you anything because I don't know what people will do. But after the primary, and even before after it was James Tallarico has made it a point, he knows he has to reach out to those other avatars that weren't his primary voters, because if he's going to win, he has to do that. So he's having to make a shift now from primary mode to general election mode. And that is a shift. It's a shift. So that's how the process works, y'all. That's how the primary process worked. That's how this whole thing played out in Dallas County, why it played out the way it did in Dallas County, and what's next with these voter rolls, with the purging, with the SAVE Act. So keep your eyes open, y'all. Keep your eyes open. And I have a whole bunch of comments. I'm not going to try to go through all these comments, y'all. I'm sorry. I will. I will get to them. I will get to them. I will answer back every comment. Let me see. I don't want to do this. Let me see, because I may be able to help somebody. Well, what's the plan for the general? You mean what's the plan for the general election? I don't know. See, that's why I know a lot of these came before I explained. That's why I tell y'all what I'm gonna do. If you have a question, I'm not voting anymore. But that's not me. I know. I get it. There's a lot of frustration out there, a lot of hurt, a lot of angst. But these Republicans are not playing. They're not. And y'all know what we've been through in the state. I'm not making a case for James Tallarico. I'm not making a case to anybody. I'm not here to make a case. I'm just here to do what I do, and that analyze politics through the lens of leadership and what these leaders are doing and why they do it, and to help you understand what it is we are dealing with as citizens. So this will be available for replay. I'm going to put some links in the comments that will help you. I'm going to put in the community post this list of things, of 10 things that when you run the primary race that you have to have, so that you can look at that. And yeah, they're counting on you staying home. Yeah, yeah. Y'all saw the deal. I mean, going from 450 polling places, cutting the polling places, 200 polling places, from 450 to 250. And I'm not going to go through all of that again, but I hope you have a better understanding of what happened, why it happened, and what we can look forward to in November, because that really was a test balloon. So if Dallas County and Williamson County, the counties of the two candidates, those were test balloons, and they saw the chaos, and they saw the people in line that were not allowed to vote. That's music to their ears. That was a test balloon. It's going to be the same thing come November. I'm predicting that not only is the SAVE Act, prayerfully it won't pass, but they have options, y'all. They have the SAVE Act as an option. They have the option, since they did the test balloon on Dallas County, they're going to do the same thing. If not nationwide, they're certainly going to do the same thing statewide. Why? Because they saw that it worked, that it kept people from voting. It worked. So they're going to do it on a larger scale come November. And then the third thing that they have working against us is we don't know what Trump will do in making a declaration of war to prevent an election. And if he makes a declaration of war, that all bets are off. The only thing that we can do is vote. That's all we got. And that's what they're afraid of, and that's what they're trying to prevent. We're not hurting anybody but ourselves if we stay home. They want us to stay home. I'm not staying home. Was Tallarico my first choice? No. But he's the choice that we have now. He's the choice that we have now. And looking at what we have, y'all, people who are looking at this who aren't in Texas, what y'all saw happen in Texas, get ready, because it's going to happen to you. It's going to happen to your city. It's going to happen to your county. They didn't just do willy-nilly counties. They didn't do the two largest counties in Texas, Dallas County and Harris County. If they were going to do something like this just on PG, just to see if it worked, they would have done it in the two largest counties in the state, Dallas and Harris. But they didn't. Why? Because they wanted to do it in the two counties of the two candidates. Why? So they could measure the impacts. It would have done them no good to do this in Harris County. And Harris County is the largest county in the state. So if their goal, as these people on the West Coast and the East Coast and all this, if their goal was to truly suppress the votes, they would have done it in the two largest counties. They would have done it in Harris and Dallas, but they didn't, because that wasn't the goal. That, although that was a benefit, that wasn't the goal. They wanted to measure the impact on the voting, on the turnout, on, as it has to do with candidates, the two candidates. That's why they did it in Tallarico's county, and that's why they did it in Congresswoman Crockett's county. Remember, I always say politics is about mathematics, and it's about planning, and it's about psychology. Politics is a science. People vote on feelings. Politics ain't about feelings. Politics don't care nothing about feelings. Politicians don't care nothing about your feelings. I just told you what the politicians look at. That y'all don't know behind the scenes. This is what they working on y'all. That's how they get your vote. Politics ain't about feelings. It's about feelings for the voters. That's why a lot of people that's why a lot of people walk around here with hurt feelings and talking about they're going to stay home. Politics ain't about that. It's about math, it's about science, and it's about psychology. It's about math, and you remember that. It's about science and it's about psychology. And all three of those worked in Dallas County. Yeah. Yeah. So, since it worked, they're going to do it. Watch. They're going to do it they're going to do it wherever they can do it in the country because it worked here. It did exactly. See, you have to think about this. Let me see. I'm going to say it, so I'm going to get out of here. Yes, it was voter suppression. That wasn't what they were caring about. They cared about the impact of the impact that it would have. The impact on the numbers. That's all they cared about. Because see, in a primary, even though people say they don't care, in a primary it's Democrat against Democrat, Republican against Republican. And to them, one Democrat is just as good as the other Democrat. So it wasn't about that. It wasn't about that at all. They didn't care which Democrat you voted for at all. They wanted to see the impact of closing those polling places, of making voters vote in their precinct. Remember what the woman said? How long they've been working on this? Because the goal for them is to have closed primaries. And the only way they could test to see if it was work. See, Allen West thought they initially tried to do it by doing hand count voters, hand counting the votes, until they figured out they didn't have enough people, and they didn't have enough money. So since they didn't have enough people, since they didn't have enough money to do the hand count, what did they do? They said, oh, well, we ain't going to play nice with y'all no more. We're just going to close. We're just going to make people vote, in their precinct. And that's what they did. Not knowing, but testing to see what impact it would have. And it did. It played out exactly like they wanted it to. As a matter of fact, it played out better than they thought it would. They didn't foresee, I'm sure, having to go to the Texas Supreme Court. That was music to their ears. Music to their ears. I guarantee you they got on their conference call. Say, man, this worked. Let's do this in the general. Another tool for them. And while we're saying, well, Congressman Crockett didn't win, so I'm going to stay home. They don't care. They want you to stay home. Because it's in November when it counts. See, it is in November when it counts. They had to do the test run in the primary. So it was about. All right. Thank y'all. I promise you I will get to your comments and I will answer every last one of them. And if you want to become a member of my channel, please do that. I've turned on memberships and calling it On the Porch. And just like we're talking now, y'all, On the Porch is going to be a monthly where we get together after the last live stream of the month. And we just talk just like this. Except y'all get to talk to me because I'm going to send you a link and it's going to be, we get to talk to one another. So it's going to be a private thing on the porch. Because as I said, we solved all the world's problems on the front porch and the back porch in Texas. We thought we did anyway. So join us on the porch. That's an option available to you. And I am Dorothy Burton, and I thank you for being here. And if the Lord say the same, y'all, we will do this again next Tuesday because God said his people perish for lack of knowledge, but not here because we don't know. All right. Love you, and I will see you next week.